Hey everybody, welcome back to the quest for the bestest from Backlog Banner. My name is Timo Nelson. This evening, you can call me The Voice. I'm joined by Tanner Dykstra, the man of the people, Abram, the arbiter of taste, Buhner, and Tucker Hazel, who does not have a nickname today. He doesn't get one.
All right.
I'm sorry. I just have, it's how we're going. Today we're talking about the movie Chicago from 2002, directed by Rob Marshall. It's a musical. We've had some thoughts and some issues about musicals before, but let's see. We'll see how this one ends up being when we get into the discussion. But first, we've got a little thing to talk about. Last week, we had old Clint Eastwood with his film Unforgiven from 1992, a Western, another genre that maybe we're not all huge fans of, but he kind of won us over a little bit. There was some interesting stuff to talk about. We talked about the genre implications and the ending and all this really cool stuff about the movie that we thought was pretty good. And we ended up placing it at number 10. So it just cracked the...
Out of 21.
Out of 21, 10 out of 21, thank you. It just cracked the top, it's in the top half of the list. If you didn't catch our special episode from a little while ago, we messed around with The Godfather Part 2's ranking, just to remind you so you're not all confused. It now sits at number 4, and so our list is filling out. It's filling out nicely. I'm very happy with it, actually.
So am I. Do great work here, boys.
Good. We're doing good stuff. And I think we should continue doing the good stuff by talking about Chicago. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
No, don't. Okay, all right. We're starting this right off the bat that, you know what, guys? I'm the indie... Whoa, that didn't come out right. I'm the anti-musical guy, classically. Sure. This happened with West Side Story. Didn't go so hotly. I really liked this movie. My least favorite part about it was Tanner singing.
You sent some questionable Discord messages about dangerous thoughts you were having due to his singing, which made me very happy.
Dangerous thoughts. Tanner likes to sing along to this film.
Boy, do I! I love singing along to Chicago's music. I think it has a absolutely stellar soundtrack to it. Some great songs, which obviously aren't unique to this film. Actually, I'd be interested to know if which songs, if there were any songs that were unique to this film that they created just for the film version. But yes, I absolutely love every song in this movie, even the slow ones, which I usually don't like. I like the slow song.
So, someone want to give us a little recap of what the plot is of this film? Because unlike other musicals, this one actually does have a pretty consistent and thorough plot throughout it.
I got it.
Tanner, you got us. All right, hit it.
Okay. It's 1920s Chicago. There's flappers, there's burlesque dances, there's hooch drinking, and boy oh boy is there murders. There's murders on every goddamn street corner, mostly women killing their lovers or husbands, or boyfriends, what have you. And one such woman is named Roxy Hart. She wants to make it into the big business, but so she starts sleeping around with this guy. He ends up to be a liar. She kills him. She goes to prison. They sing some songs. They have some fun. And through the way, she meets Billy Flynn, who's the best criminal lawyer in all of Illinois. And he and Roxy Hart, they sort of they build this relationship, and they end up, they go to court. And what's going to happen? Is Roxy Hart going to get off? Is she not? Let's find out.
We watched the movie. She does.
Watch the movie. She does get off. Also, Velma Kelly's there. She's like, she was going to be the person that was going to go to court, but then Roxy Hart comes along and steals her place in court. It's all very dramatic, and I love it very much.
There you go. Abram, what are your thoughts on this movie to lead us off after our excellent synopsis there?
I think this film is mesmerizing. I loved Chicago. I think that it really is the complete package for me in terms of evocative feel, in terms of great thematic elements, in terms of really excellent filmmaking elements. I think the editing in particular is astonishing. I think that the way that the film coalesces into the larger Chicago experience is truly stunning, and it takes an incredibly deliberate and talented cast and crew to pull this off. And I think this is one of the best films we've watched for this program.
Wow.
Whoa, he's coming out strong.
Glowing review.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tucker, you hinted a little bit that you really liked it. Care to tell us why?
Yeah, so going into this, I was mostly carrying my West Side Story opinions with me, particularly on how I would enjoy this film. However, I would say that this does subvert most of my complaints when it comes to what I don't enjoy about musicals. I think the main part being this is a very character-focused, story-focused film that happens to have musical numbers. The musical numbers aren't, often some sort of dreamland, not really impacting the story. They are intercut with actual things happening. They reflect the things that are going on with the characters. There's character development that's shown off through each of the songs. And while you get some of that in some of the other musicals, I think this one does a great job not only at having those musical numbers, which tie into the characters, but having a compelling story outside of that. There's a solid part of the movie that is not in musical numbers at all, which, give me a little bit of time to breathe, just a little bit of time to reset my brain and get ready for the next thing to happen. But I thought that the balance of that was really, really interesting. And on top of that, really interesting characters that have interesting dynamics and interesting cultural implications for the time and the era and the justice system and all things like that. And I think there's a lot to dig in here from thematic point of view, from visuals, from editing, all of that. And I really did enjoy it a lot more than I was expecting to.
I enjoyed this film too. I thought it was a fun musical. I liked the musical elements. It's a little different. You said that you liked how it doesn't, like, the musical elements are, I would say, separate. They exist as like a show. Maybe a show is being put on about the story, but it's getting intercut with the actual story happening, and that's pretty cool. I think there is a lot of stuff to like. I really want to eventually dive into the thematic material and how it being a musical serves the theme of the film, which is something that is very interesting about, if you're going to do a genre movie, you really should lay into and have that impact what you're saying in the film. And this film has some stuff to say about justice, news, journalism, show business. It's got all that there. And not only does it ask some questions, I think it gives some answers, which Abram, we know, likes it when the film actually has some stuff to say rather than just making you think a little bit. So, yeah, there is some stuff I didn't like, but it's a little minor about it. So, I mean, we can get right in. Tanner, you have something? You're giving a thoughtful look on your face.
I mean, the only thing that detracts from this movie for me is that I think you can count on about two hands the amount of non-musical footage in this movie. It's basically wall-to-wall musical numbers, which are done well. I really want to compliment the production design. The choreography is all stellar in each and every one. They're all, they're all like the vaudevillian, burlesque dancing scenes, but each one feels unique in how its costume design is presented and how the choreography is done. But again, there's not a lot of time for the actual story to come through in just basic narrative scenes. So that's the one thing that detracts for me. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that, or otherwise I want to move on to the performances.
Now, look, we essentially just came at this from exactly polar opposite angles, is that I was praising it for having enough of that, and I think, well, you're right, there isn't a lot of... I think there's a solid amount of downtime between the songs. I don't really feel that, but
there's some sequences where it's like a minute or two of actual narrative between musical sequences.
Well, I would say that the thing that keeps that from sticking out so harshly in my head is that the musical sequences are intercut with current real life,
that's true.
Footage of what's going on. So you don't feel like you're stuck in the musical numbers. It's always progressing the real world story as they're happening simultaneously. And so I feel like there is a good balance between that, and I didn't feel like it was totally separate. It's so intertwined with one another that I didn't feel like there wasn't a lot of downtime because I don't know. I just think that the balance works really well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd push back on that a little bit too, and I think it returns to what Timo was praising the film on, the fact that the musical nature of the story is so intrinsic to what it's trying to say. For me, it didn't feel like it was distracting, even when some of those numbers go on incredibly long.
Yeah.
And especially like Tucker was saying, whether that's Roxy having her internal monologue about her husband flipping on her to the police as those things are happening back and forth. I think that the way musical numbers are used so differently throughout the film, always to service where it's going, kept them engaging and didn't make it feel distracting, in my opinion.
Yeah. A lot of times musicals will fall into the trap of having just well, if we want to point fingers, the musical Cats is basically just all I am songs. It's characters explaining who they are. But this one mixes it up a lot. There's some I am songs. There's some I want songs. These are all like musical terms I'm throwing around in there.
Well, you are I would say you're the most knowledgeable about musicals, so I'm fine to be educated.
It's a solid mix of how the songs are used, like Abram said. But I did want to talk about the performances, like I said, because rewatching this movie, I really did get a stronger feel. The third time I've watched this movie, by the way, or no, third or fourth, I don't really remember. But I really did get a great feel for the performances in this. Catherine Zeta-Jones as Velma Kelly is, I want to say not in it enough, but also she basically steals a scene whenever she's in it. She just has that great, like, brassy personality that a vaudeville, burlesque dancer would have. Richard Gere is like weirdly good in this. He's not really good in a lot of other movies, but in this, Billy Flynn, he's sort of like that. He's sort of got that smarmy, like, wisecrackingness that a criminal lawyer of this time would have. He's great. And Renee Zellweger, not an actress that I'm usually tending to like. I usually make fun of her and the face that she always makes in all of her movies. You know the one.
The face, sure.
She's real squinty for some reason, but even then, she did grow on me over the course of this movie, and she kind of like, she does this fake innocence very well, where like she's tricking the characters because they sort of live in this heightened world. But also, she's fun for the audience to watch because you can see how well she's tricking everybody. It's just fun. All the performances are very charismatic and they're very fun.
Yeah, I think the performances are helped, that the musical elements are done well, and that it never seems to me, I don't know about the production, like if Renee Zellweger actually sang her songs, but the singing that I could hear when she was supposed to be up there, belting it out, was good, and I enjoyed it. And sometimes for me, listening to just music, I have a bit of an issue comprehending lyrics. It's a little bit of this, I actually like music and I listen to a lot of music, but sometimes I listen to a song with lyrics and they enter my brain and they leave on the other side. And I don't get them, I don't hear them, and I don't pay attention to them. But in musicals, I find myself really getting the lyrics, and I'm like, oh, like play of words, like, okay, cool. And I felt that in this one. There's some clever lines that are just like playing back and forth. And then when you add to the intercut, I think that really makes it fun to just listen and pay attention to. I'm like, oh, I gotta catch this next one-liner. I wanna anticipate it. I wanna feel it. And so the filmmakers make me invested just through the dialogue or the lyrics.
Yeah. I do want to say, I'm pretty sure from my knowledge that all the actors do their own singing. Renee Zellweger is like a pretty professionally trained singer. She's also in Judy, the Judy Garland biopic. She does her own singing in that. Yeah. So from looking at the Spotify soundtrack, the soundtrack on Spotify, all the actors and actresses are credited for the songs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So I thought they did very well. Even John C. Reilly was good in his little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was definitely solid. I actually do. Oh, am I gonna cut out?
Yeah, you're good.
That was weird.
Yeah, you're.
Okay, so really, what I wanted to comment on is Tanner bringing up the fact that the performances were so strong, and where I'm coming from this, not particularly connecting to musicals. I found that these characters were so engaging, not only because the performances were good, but because they were complex characters. They had layers to their wants, to their desires, to their conflicts with one another, to their histories, and through all of that, I felt like I was really able to get a connection to Billy, to Roxy, to Velma, and these characters that aren't clear cut good or bad. They have their wants. I mean, essentially, we're watching something that shouldn't happen go on. We're watching a mistreatment of the justice system happen from the inside, and so. Throughout, you're like, okay, I want the justice system to prevail. I want things to come out as they should, but I also really root for Billy and for Roxy and for them to, sort of worm their way through the system and come out the other side triumphant. So I found that not only the story, but the character to be very compelling. And I think that's why I probably connected to this more than I do other musicals. Because if we look back at at West Side Story especially is I found large problems with that film's story because it was just a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and I didn't think it went far enough for that. And so these characters that are telling a unique and compelling story, I mean, the concept of talking about female prison is something that we don't see very often in films. So right on that part, it's already interesting. And then, there's layers on top of that. But it also weaves in show business and plays that off of the justice system. And I think that's why the musical numbers work so well. Is this is thematically about performances. It's about these characters trying to get into the business. And so, of course, in their head, they're seeing themselves as performers. And you're getting these dream sequences where they're imagining what's happening. And I found all that to be really totally consistent, intricate, complex, very, very engaging.
There was one line where I heard the lawyer, whatever his name,
Billy Flynn.
Billy Flynn goes, talking about the trial, talking about the justice system, he says, it's show business, baby. And I was like, that's literally the theme of the movie. I was like,
yeah.
He just said it. And it was not over, heavy-handed or whatever. In that moment, I was like, yeah, like, oh, I get it. And then I was like, oh, wait, but it's also a musical. And so, like, the show business of the musical, like, the amped upness of a musical, it's got it's got sing and dance sequences. I mean, if you can't be more show business than that, that's a tough challenge. So to have that in there when you're talking about like the literal performances that people are giving to get acquitted of murder that we saw them commit, that worked really well from a thematic standpoint to me.
Yes.
I think that this is a film, speaking to the performances, that's very energetic and very genuine. And I think that's part of what connected me to these characters. Like Tucker was saying, they are complex and they are layered, but they all really sell what they're doing. And I think the entire film really sells itself very well. Visually, I was incredibly impressed. The ways that the characters are able to move into these more like ethereal and kind of conceptual sequences and back into reality, the way it comes together is captivating. And I think the one point for me, and I think I disagree with Timo a little bit here, is in the end the razzle dazzle number, which I love. It does get a little bit I do think the film gets a little bit heavy handed.
Yeah.
It does sell itself well, like I was saying, with the energy and the genuineness and especially the tap dancing sequence. I love
the tap dancing sequence I had completely forgotten about it going into this rewatch, but it is brilliant stuff.
Yeah, it's really great, and it speaks to energy and that genuine performance. But I do think it does speak to the fact that, okay, we're here, we're in the climax of the film. Let's kind of nudge you into. The film's always pretty clear about what it's trying to tell you, but then it just is like, it does show the hand at the end, which I don't think is necessarily to its detriment. But that, I suppose, that's the one point where I was taken out maybe a little bit from the experience.
Sure.
There was actually a few times where I personally found myself a little overwhelmed by the editing, especially in some of the musical numbers, where there are so many, they try so many different unique shots, but they combine them in really, I think, awkward ways occasionally. I enjoy snappy editing, but I really found it to be overwhelming when it would be going so fast and you weren't able to get a sense of, the choreography or the scale of the dancers going on. It was cut into their legs, it was cut into like above them, below them, like all sorts of different angles, and I found that to be, it gave me a headache in a few sequences. On the whole, I really think that the editing is fantastic in this movie. That's my first point here. Is I like the snappy editing, but I do think that they took it too far in some sequences, and I think that that's probably my personal biggest detriment of the film. Because on the whole, I like almost every single aspect of it, but I think when that snappy editing goes a little too far, it can take me out of the moment where I'm like, okay, well, I can't really pay attention to what's going on here because they're just trying to make it go so fast and fit the beat that I, my brain can't really process.
Right.
To me, when I think about this film and the editing, it stems from the cinematography. And there's elements of the cinematography in this film that I like. And there's some elements in this cinematography that I really do not like about this movie. There are a lot of shots where there's camera movement and flashy camera moves that serve no purpose. There's no reason for them to be there, and they obscure the real show. The characters are dancing and whatever. And in order to appreciate the characters dancing, but I'm like watching and the camera's panning all over the place and tracking and dollying and, doing all the fancy moves. And I'm just like, I'm thinking about that, and I'm just like, this doesn't need to be here. That said, there are some really interesting shots. There's a shot with the two characters. I'm failing on the names today. With the lawyer and
Velma and Roxy.
well,
or no?
with Roxy and Billy.
Okay.
And they're looking through a glass. They're looking through like a chain thing in the jail, like a chain wall or
Yep.
whatever, and their eyes keep lining up in the squares. And I like that shot a lot, and I like the sequence with Roxy in the dark. That sequence, which was a slower song,
Yeah.
and the mirrors were coming
Yeah.
out of nowhere, and I thought that was a really cool,
That was
creative.
crazy.
That was a really excellent
that was-
sequence, and there were
that.
like no cuts. That was all practical, right? And so
Yes.
every time they cut, and every time that, and then like I don't know, at the end of the movie, there's like some sequence where I think it was the final number where Velma and Roxy are together.
Nowadays
and
number,
they're at the end of it, and the camera is just going crazy in the audience, and I can't
Yes.
see anything, and it's cutting so fast, and I was like, this is
Yeah.
really flashy, and it really takes me out of it, and so I don't know, there's some good, but on the whole, I was not a fan of the cinematography. In its attempt to go crazy, it's really bland.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree. For me, it returns to the energy of the film, and I
Yeah.
think the camera work added a lot to the experience. There were elements. There's this one, I don't remember exactly what number it is, but the camera keeps cutting closer and closer and closer to this woman's face. And that was the first instance I'm like, okay, I noticed the editing. And sometimes overt editing is more of an issue than to the film's strength. And to Timo's point, I do think there are times when the editing becomes so central that it becomes a point of discussion in itself. But I think on the whole, the movement of the camera and the way it's edited takes this stage performance and elevates it with this perhaps showy and maybe unnecessary cinematic flair. But I think that services what the film is trying to convey. For me, I think the height of the showmanship is part of the entire ethos of the film. So I didn't necessarily, on the whole, find it as distracting, even if there were moments where I definitely felt it too much.
Yeah.
I somewhat agree, because I think when you're cross-cutting, it's like, taking one spotlight off of an area on the stage and putting it on another. And that works really well. And the cross-cutting, I mean, you have to write that. They knew they were going to do that from the beginning. And so I feel like there are elements where it really works, and then there are some times where it just isn't hitting for me.
Sure.
Sure.
I have a question for the group.
Okay.
For the class.
Yeah, musicals are really interesting in that you can really divide them up, especially this movie, because it's just chock full of musical sequences. You can really divide them up into certain. You can look at them as unique sections of the film. They each tackle a character trait or a character moment or a theme of the film. So I was going to ask you, the combination of thematic, meaning performance, production design, editing. What was your guys' favorite song in this film?
So I feel like I've got two answers. What is it? It's the Prison Block Tango. Is that what they call it?
Cell Block Tango.
The Cell Block Tango is so visually distinct, and I
Yes.
love the use of the handkerchiefs and everything. But I think if you're going to talk about the convergence of elements, it's got to be the gun number, where you're cutting to Richard Gere pulling the mannequin strings and then back down. That was just
a great
so
shot, yeah.
clever.
Yeah.
We
It's
both
so
reached
clever.
Yeah, we both reached for the gun is my personal favorite song to re-listen to and rewatch the scene, because the combination of the editing and the production design, the costuming, and like you said, the shots where like Richard Gere is like a giant Richard Gere controlling the mannequins, the puppets of the reporters. It's all great. It's so catchy. It's got a nice beat to it. It is my favorite musical sequence.
It's mine too.
Of the film.
But I would say bring back to the other one. I forget what it is, but it was a monologue, a soliloquy, if you will, of Roxy walking around in the dark. I just thought that was a really creative and interestingly shot.
I think that one is just called Roxy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That one was
because
cool.
the big ass sign.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
they have the neon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works well. And then there's a
Sort of
callback to it
reminiscent
later
of,
as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Reminiscent of what's that Marilyn Monroe movie where she does the thing where like all the guys in the tuxedos are like carrying her around? Is that Gentlemen Prefer Blondes?
I really don't
I
remember.
think so. I mean, I've seen that movie, but I don't remember that.
Tucker, if anyone was gonna know, I thought it'd be you.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
Can't help
it's the
with
one where
that
she sings. It's the one where she sings. Diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Oh,
that movie.
That is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I don't
Okay.
necessarily remember that sequence, but sure. Yeah,
Yes.
I can see what you're saying with the cinematic
Yes.
parallels there. But I think obviously that was intended, trying to mimic that earlier style of musicals.
Well-
with the makeup, one of the coolest parts of the movie is completely tangential, but is when she's recreating the hairstyles and stuff of the era, and it's really showing. You can tell, like, okay, that I remember seeing those kind of hairstyles in older movies. Like, they're really going far on the production design. I think it worked really well. But I think from my perspective, music doesn't really usually connect with me. I have to have some sort of outside experience related to music for me to really remember it in my head. And while I do remember a few of the songs because of their visuals, I couldn't tell you their names. I couldn't really hum them unless I was reintroduced to them. Not a knock on their quality, but just how I perceive them. So when I'm thinking about these sequences, I'm mostly thinking about the visual elements. And I think along with Timo, one of the only sequences that I have as its own point on my positives is that sequence in the mirror in the dark. I think one of the most unique shots in this film, and honestly one of the most unique shots I've ever seen, is where it's all dark and she's really far in the background and you can barely see her and she's doing her dancing or whatever. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't even know how they got this so far out. I don't know how they got it so pitch black with the lighting on her and you can't see the light source. Like, there's a lot of element to that blew me away, and then the mirrors start getting introduced. From a visual aspect, I think that was probably my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah. Performance. Well, I'm gonna shout out. Yeah, like I said, the purely music wise and like the entire picture, I'm gonna say we both reach for the gun. Performance wise, though, I'm going to go with I Can't Do It Alone, which is Velma Kelly's one when she's like doing both sides of the sister act to Roxy, trying to convince her. But you can tell that Catherine Zeta-Jones was just giving 110% in that scene, because that is exactly what Velma Kelly is doing in that sequence. They literally introduced that musical sequence as, ladies and gentlemen, Velma Kelly in an act of desperation.
Desperation, yeah, great moment, great line.
I will say, character-wise, Velma Kelly was not as like an interesting to me character. She seemed, I don't know, she seemed sidelined at points, but she also, like, the film wanted to take an interest in her, but the film also really didn't care about her. And and just like that sequence, even though I can recognize the performance merits, the way it was written with Roxy like just being whatever about it at the end, just kind of like deflated it to me, because the film is like built up Roxy as the character, and like I'm rooting for her. I want her to get away with killing the dude. And then I see Velma as the antagonist essentially, and so even though like I'm not sure that's really how it is, but just to me, the way the film portrays the two characters, and so to have that moment, I don't know, it didn't quite fit with me. It was okay later on when they came back together, and I like that sequence at the end of the movie with the two of them dancing. But in that moment, it felt a little odd, and it didn't sit quite right with me. And I'm not entirely sure of her character's, I see her character function, but I don't know about her character merit.
Sure. I also want quickly another performance number I wanted to point out. Mr. Cellophane, John C. Reilly, he plays that sort of like bit side role character very well. He's just sort of like, he gets walked over constantly. He's getting manipulated by literally everyone in this movie, and he really doesn't get a redemption, I don't think, does he?
No, he doesn't.
He just sort of.
Well, the redemption is that he's an innocent character and that he wants the best for everyone. Like, his redemption is his personality. I don't think he needs a specific moment, because he's acting as he should. He doesn't do anything particularly wrong in the movie, and he's being manipulated left from right. And I was gonna say a joke. I was like, oh, I didn't even notice him in the movie.
Nice.
But while we're talking about characters' roles in the story and their thematic elements, I do think I agree with Timo when it comes to Velma Kelly's character. I think she's really interesting, but I think she's played mostly for thematic elements. She exists to be the sort of goal point for Roxy. She's in the business. She's who she looks up to. But then she also serves the purpose to show how the cycle of journalism works, where Roxy surpasses her, and now she's below, and she has to figure it out. So she is a really interesting character, in my opinion. I just wish that they gave more time to develop her as a person. Like, she killed her sister, and obviously that was shown in Cell Block Tango. But
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of interesting elements to her. In some ways, I would like a movie about her. I would love a story about her, but she is sort of sidelined for Roxy. And I think if the movie had been more of a balance between the two of them, I think it really could have been slightly more compelling.
Sure.
I think my perspective is that neither Velma nor Roxy are especially important to the film. I think this is a film that operates mainly thematically, and the moment that really hit me is as soon as she's acquitted, and then that random woman kills her husband on the steps of the courthouse.
And she's the new hot thing.
Yeah, and everyone leaves. And then, Roxy kind of slips away, and then we get the big final number where they're completely exploiting their very dark past. And the shot of that sticks out to me is Richard Gere laughing in the audience. I don't necessarily think that this is a film about any of its central female leads. I think it's a film way more about the thematic elements and the ways that characters like Richard Gere are exploiting them. So for me, I don't necessarily think that the underserving of them is a detriment when, in my opinion, the strength of the film is this sort of thematic undercurrent about tragedy informing news and public perception informing justice and all of these things. For me, that's what this film is actually trying to do. And the characters really are just tools to get there.
Sure. Actually, that's a pretty convincing argument for, the detriment that I was talking about there. Because I really do think it's the intertwinedness of all of the different thematic elements that movie has that really sold it to me. Like Abram was saying, the movie sells itself very well, and it's able to show each of these aspects of society from the justice system to journalism to show business to the prison system to marital strife and public perception, and all of those things are not things that I can say from the large amount of movies that I've seen usually get played off of one another. And I think the fact that it was able to balance those really well, and as Abram is listing all these points, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, that is a really interesting way to see this, and it flows throughout. I think it all works really well from a thematic level.
I wanted to shout out a particular moment in this film where it doesn't happen very often, but this is one moment that sticks out to me where it does show, because a lot of time it's the big, it's flashy, it's exaggerated, it's all this stuff, and they're using that to point out the flaws in the themes that it's tackling. But one moment that is not that at all is the death of the Hungarian woman. They refer to her as Hunyak, but I'm pretty sure that is like a slang term for a Hungarian immigrant.
Sure, yeah, most likely.
They do say her name at one point, but I can't recall it. So, but yeah, when she's hung, she's executed. The first female ever to be executed in this prison in the state, I believe. And they do intercut that with with another performance piece itself, but it's not. It does show the darker underbelly of the themes of this film.
Did you notice in the Cell Block Tango, her handkerchief that she pulled from the dude she killed was not red. It was white.
It was white.
Which, if you want to read into it, could mean that maybe she actually didn't kill him.
She was in it. Yeah, she was innocent.
She actually was innocent and was killed.
Because that was the only thing she was saying. Was she, not guilty is the only thing she could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is very interesting.
Yeah.
And the point that sequence is played way less or less exaggerated and is played more seriously, I think was the correct choice from a directing point of view. You probably shouldn't play that up for the show,
Yes. But yeah, I think it shows the consequences, the stakes that these people are under, and why they're acting so ruthlessly in such a cutthroat manner. Because she wasn't, if we're reading into the themes of the film, she wasn't even a murderer, and that's what happened to her. And you're looking at all these people who are basically admitting to their murders, and that's why they're acting in this exaggerated, showy, they're hiring Billy Flynn, they're faking pregnancies in prison. That's why they're acting in this manner.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think I think we've had a good discussion about it, and I am curious to see where all the votes come in. So if you will, vote now on your phones. Audience, if you're listening, think about where you would put it on if you've watched along with us on out of our 21 movies.
Oh, that'd be fun.
And we'll be right back with a little discussion and a number about where Chicago ends up on our list. All right. So I've received through electronic communication a number, and I'll just spew it right now. It's 9.75.
Ooh.
Now,
who was it that drug it down? Past tense of drag, whatever it is.
Well, if we're going to go in alphabetical order, Abram put it at number 5. This was his vote. Tanner, next up in the alphabet, put it at number 12. Tucker, Tucker's last. I put it at number 14, so there's your answer. I drug it down. And Tucker put it at number 8.
I see.
So we had a bit of a spread.
That's interesting to me.
This is very interesting.
This is the most interesting spread I think we've had from multiple angles.
So,
Because I came into this, Tanner walked into my room last night. He's like, would you care to explain your 9 out of 10 for Chicago? And I was like, oh, no, we're going to talk about it on the podcast tomorrow, so there's no reason to talk about it now. But I think this game is... God damn it! I'm still in game review mode. I think this film is so unique in terms of how it presents itself as a musical that it blew me away. And the fact that it was so thematically interesting and I was so interested in the characters proved to me that musicals can be something that I enjoy. And I think maybe that's why I pushed it higher. Sure. I'm wholeheartedly surprised and kind of elated to see that I put it pretty significantly above where Tanner wanted it.
Yeah.
That's surprising to me. That's surprising.
I mean, I heard all the things that you guys are saying. I appreciated the in-depth analysis. But for me, Chicago is and always will be just kind of like a fun experience movie and not much more than that. Because my issue still stands is that I think it's, as much as I love the musical numbers, I will rewatch those musical numbers numerous times on YouTube because I just think they're a grand old time. But I don't think it's balanced very well with the actual narrative of the film. I don't know. Like I said, I've watched this movie 4 times now. I'll rewatch it again however many times I feel like I should/need to. But yeah, it's just a fun experience movie for me and not much else other than that. I could be convinced to, since it's at 9.75, you said, Timo?
Yeah, which would be at number 10.
I could be, if we were interested, I could be convinced to change my vote enough to bump it up to number 9, but we can keep going around and discussing.
For me, I barely enjoyed this more than I enjoyed West Side Story. Okay. So that's why it gets the one place above, and I most definitely enjoyed our 13th place, Grand Hotel, more than this movie. It's fun and it's interesting, and I think there's some cool stuff to think about it, but it just kind of didn't quite stack up all that much for me. And while I like musicals and there's a lot of stuff to like about it, there are just like some of the elements left me feeling weird about it. I was not I didn't really like Velma Kelly's character. I didn't like the cinematography most of the time, and so to me, it just those I don't know. They led to it going in between Grand Hotel and West Side Story. I guess maybe because West Side Story is our other musical, which I actually enjoyed quite a lot. I would have, I ranked that one a lot higher.
You did enjoy
in
that
the moment.
One, yeah.
I think this does interesting stuff for the musical genre and whatnot, but I kind of don't see it stacking up. I mean, I don't see it stacking up near Unforgiven, actually. That's so,
okay.
That was the one most recently, and I don't know. I think we've got some pretty damn good movies on here, and this one fits into the category of good, but as good as some of our top 10s, not really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, this is a very good movie, a very fun movie. I will rewatch it multiple times. But yeah, although like I said, I could fall on either side of the fence here for number 9 or number 10.
Well,
so what are we thinking?
Let's let Mr. Number 5 over here, Abram, convince you of the ninth place. How about?
Okay.
I think you guys are out of your minds.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And here's why I think you are, because For me, we talk about the gimmick movie on here sometimes. We all have our opinions of what the gimmick is. But for me, the strength of Chicago is that its gimmick, its musical numbers, are so integral and so intrinsic to what it's trying to do. I really think this is a film in which all of its elements, in very unique ways, service what it's trying to say. We talk about films that have great themes, like something like The Gentleman's Agreement, which we love for its thematic elements, the ways it's able to drum up and tool up thoughts about current social issues. What I think is so interesting about Chicago is the way that it makes us think of these very contemporary and I think still very relevant thematic elements in the context of a strikingly bold and visually interesting film that has an incredible musical component that does not feel like it's there purely to be a series of musical numbers. It's a series of incredibly visually rich, witty, well-crafted sequences that talk about character development and motivation and thematic points that all tie together, I think, into this sort of self-referential, really tight little experience that is, Tanner, very fun, but I think a lot more weighty than we give it credit for.
Okay.
A lot of its thematic material, I think, is very poignant. I think a lot of its creative decisions are very bold, and I think that it coalesces in an experience that's very unique. We talk about also the Oscar film, the Oscar bait film. I do not think that this is Oscar bait at all. I think
I don't know. It's a bit show businessy, you know. It's tangential to the trope of a movie about Hollywood. It's a movie about show business. So the argument could be made, but I definitely see the points that you're making.
I think I just think it's a very fresh and very inventive film that hits our metrics. I think it hits a lot of the filmmaking fundamentals, whether we disagree on the success of all of them. I think it hits a lot of those. I think it's very witty. I think it's incredibly creative. And I value feel. I value theme. I value uniqueness. I think this film has all of it in spades, and none of it feels compromised. I think this film is excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. A lot of people that detract from this film say, "Oh, The Pianist should have won in 2002." But The Pianist, though I haven't seen it, very much does strike me. It's a period piece. It's a drama. Very much does strike me as an Oscar baity film. So, yeah, you're convincing. You are convincing me to go up to number 9. So.
For me, some of the I've been thinking about the thematic material, and while I find its discussion interesting, I don't find it particularly personally affecting as much as say Gentleman's Agreement, which is I think the gold standard for thematic material on our list. So it's interesting thoughts about journalism and the media and how good press is all press is good press, and about the justice system, but it just didn't. It had a little bit to say about it, but I feel like a lot of it was kind of out there to me, and it didn't and essentially make it, if you're going to be really intense about a theme, you can make it really personally relatable. And to me, some of it, besides my thoughts of I'm studying some journalism, the journalism's being misused here. Other than that, it wasn't nailing it home. I think it's interesting. I think all the confluence of stuff provides a really interesting base that then the farther up you go, the tower of thematic goodness fizzles out a little bit.
I pretty much agree with you there, TMO, but based on my personal enjoyment alone, I think I can be convinced to put this at number 9. Okay. To bump it up to number 9, if we're going to allow that.
Tucker? Do you think we should allow
it? Sounds good to me. I mean, I put it above number 9. Okay. Personally, on my own list, I have it below All About Eve, which is our current number 9. Yeah. But I decided to put it a little bit above because I do think that what this film does is so unique in comparison to some of the other films we've seen. And as we've started watching more and more of these Best Picture winners, I value the uniqueness and setting stuff apart almost more than anything else. If a film can have an element that I feel can set it apart as a Best Picture winner, I'm more likely to trend it higher.
That is very true. Yes, I can agree with that. Yeah.
But so it appears that we're going to decide on number 9 because I put it.
I think so.
We have 2 above and you're going up 1. But quickly before we get to that, and the spin, which is coming up in a second, I have the wins and noms for you.
Oh yeah, true.
It won Best Picture. Supporting actress for Catherine Zeta-Jones is Velma Kelly. She's got a tongue twister name. Costume design, just totally deserved.
Yeah.
Film editing, as we discussed, slightly debatable from some perspectives, but
Has
I
the
think,
most editing.
I think it has a lot of editing. I think it's deserved. Production design,
Yeah.
again, highly deserved.
Absolutely
We can agree on
deserved,
that one.
Yeah, especially from those visually striking musical numbers that it has. It was nominated for Best Actress for Renee Zellweger, who I think we didn't give enough credit to. I think throughout the film, she's really quite an interesting character. I haven't seen her in a ton of stuff. I didn't love her in Judy last year, but I think she did a great job here. Nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Queen Latifah, who was fine. She was good, but I think that was sort of a...
Honestly, her song was the only one I could have done without in the entire movie. She's not.
Yeah.
I feel like she's not like a central enough character to deserve her own "I Am" song.
Yeah. So we also have Best Supporting Actress for John C. Reilly, who was okay. I don't think a nomination really
He's lovable.
necessary, but
Lovable.
Best Adapted Screenplay, I guess from a musical.
Yes.
You do have to
Okay.
figure out how to take one stage and make it into many. So that's
Sure,
the
good
adaptation
point, yeah.
going on there.
Nominated for Cinematography, which we've discussed to death
There are
here,
good shots.
and for best director for good old Rob Marshall. Yeah, Robert Marshall.
Yes.
Sure. I mean,
He
clearly
definitely
was-
directed those musical
yeah,
sequences.
clearly a film that was handled from a top-down perspective of everyone filling their roles and stuff like that. So I think also a deserved nomination there. So
Yeah.
I think very solid list of wins and noms. I'm very happy with that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that,
Well,
Tucker.
that's an NMI
That's
segment.
all he's got. It's time to spin the wheel, I think. But I have an ask. We have our
go.
we have our rhyme, we have our song for the wheel. Tanner, would you do us the favor of providing a rendition from the film for the wheel spin instead of our little rhyme?
He's gonna do the gun song. Goddamn.
I'm putting you on the
fuck,
spot
I
here.
can't. You put me on the spot, and I can't remember a goddamn lyric from that song.
Gun,
Except
gun.
Except
Touch
for
the
oh
gun,
yes.
pick up the gun, love the gun, touch it.
Gun,
Where'd
Trick
you
it on
come
mannequin
from,
strings.
Mississippi? How old were you? Don't remember. How are your parents? Very wealthy. Where are they now? 6 feet under, but she
Okay,
was dated
that's
one more
enough of that.
start. I love the Sacred Heart.
Thank you for going along with my insane request there,
Yeah,
Tanner.
yeah.
You can see the number as much as I can. It's the number 63. That's pretty far down the list, actually.
It is.
It
It truly is.
What are we watching next week,
boy.
Tucker? Sock it to
We're
me.
sitting here in the meaty mid 30s here, 1936.
Oh, boy.
Depression era.
36.
Now,
Okay.
now this is directed by Robert Z. Leonard, who I don't assume any of us have heard of, but
Eh.
it's got two hearty stars for us to get into here: William Powell and Myrna Loy, who I'm very
Haven't heard of
excited to. Well, they're the Thin Man couple essentially.
Oh, okay.
Which those are good movies. But this is The Great Ziegfeld.
Oh, the great
Oh.
Ziegfeld. Okay.
That is a Best Picture winner.
I have
Very
Should
short.
I know what this is?
No, I don't think so. But
Absolutely
the
not.
short description here says the last word in entertainment. Lavish biography of Flo Ziegfeld, the producer who became Broadway's biggest star maker.
So I've seen Ziegfeld's Follies, which is a similarly old and similarly themed film, but I have not seen The Great Ziegfeld. It's all about this
Is
one
it
guy.
similarly almost 3 hours?
Oh, no, I don't think it was. I think I saw it as a double feature once, so it must have not been too long.
Is this one almost 3 hours?
Yeah, 176.
Whoa, boy, okay.
I thought they didn't make long movies back then.
Yeah, you can't have that
on
many
now.
reels of film.
Yeah.
Well, what about that there Gone with the Wind? Only a few
Well,
years later.
that's a special case.
And that's the
This-
longest movie ever made, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
It's a
yeah.
joke.
This sounds like the convergence of all the things I don't like, so I can't wait to discuss it next week.
Oh, yes.
It's gonna be interesting.
The Convergence?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes.
Oh,
Oh yes, they both reached for the gun, 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 the gun. Oh yes, they both reached for the gun, for the gun.
Now he can remember just fine.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me on this discussion of a very interesting movie. Glad we watched it, because I don't get out to, on my own choice, watch too many musicals, but I liked it, even though I didn't have it at the highest spot ever. We'll be back next week to talk about The Great Ziegfeld from when? 1936?
Yep.
1936, all 170 some minutes of it. We will be discussing at length. We'll probably take about the same amount of time to get through all of our thoughts. Maybe not.
No.
I don't think we could talk about that for 3 hours.
I am laying down the law for what next week's episode is going to be without knowing anything about the film. But if you want to find out about the film, join us next time. We'll be here to talk about it on The Quest for the Bestest from Backlog Banner. Hit us up on our YouTube channel, Backlog Banner on YouTube. Follow our Twitter account. Go, we have a Letterboxd. If you want to see the updated list, just look up Backlog Banter on Letterboxd, and it's the only list on that account, so you won't miss it. Thank you for joining me, Tanner, Abram Tucker. It's been a good time. I enjoyed it. I am freezing my tush off here. It's freaking cold, so we'll catch y'all next time. All right, peace out.
A treasure. Every time I play every time I play a treasure tracker level and Toad makes a fucking noise, I'm like, Mama! Wow! I have had I get a first bill today. I'm reading Timo's messages here. It is an average refreshment freaking the legal Discord server.
Timo, just start recording. I'll be in the thinker pose for the entire episode.
Turn it off and on your camera.
No. What are you doing?
I'm trying to pop out my ass a little bit. Oh, okay.
Why?
It was really funny. No! That's mine!
Oh, wow.
Just imagine seeing that up close and personal.
Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night.
Hey, there we go.